All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. And if anybody else joins us, we'll let them hop in. So thank you all for joining us today for our webinar, Derailed by Deregulation, brought to you by Optus. I'm Sophie Rogers, Senior Creative Marketing Specialist here. Before we begin, I would like to let you know that your mics have been muted. However, if you have a question, please pop them in the chat, or I will unmute your mics during our question breaks. We're going to have one about halfway through and then, of course, at the end. With that, I would personally like to introduce our speaker for today, Shane Lerma. With over 30
Hey
years of
guys,
experience in tech. Hello.
I was just saying hi. I was glad to have an intro, Sophie.
Let me brag on you a little bit more, Shane.
If you're going to do that, I'm going to go off camera for a minute.
Oh, please do, so you don't blush. All right, time to brag on Shane a bit. With over 30 years of experience in technology, spanning cloud, cybersecurity, telecommunications, and so much more, Shane has built a strong reputation for leveraging technology to achieve business objectives. His expertise lies in cloud transformation, technology design, forging strategic partnerships, and leading cross-functional teams to success. He's committed to enhancing productivity, efficiency, and customer satisfaction by providing tailored solutions that meet customers' evolving needs. If you have any question following today's program, please feel free to reach out to him directly. And with that, Shane, you'll have to stop blushing for a minute, but go ahead and take it away.
All right.
Much.
Well, hey guys, glad everyone can make it today. Thank you for your time. We know that's valuable. So we're here today talking about copper wire deregulation and how that affects you guys. So that's a change in the marketplace that's been happening for a couple of years here, and sometimes those effects are just now starting to be felt from particular carriers. Um, but as Sophie said, I've been doing technology for a while, and the one thing that I've learned over the years is technology is always changing. So before we get started here, I just want to share a couple quotes from some people in the business world that I have heard over the years that I think are pretty critical to business. One of them, a guy you may know, Warren Buffett. Buffett, he needs no introduction, right? I think he said digital transformation is a fundamental reality to business today. So everything's changing. Everything's digital. Some of the older technologies just are kind of going by the wayside. Another person, John Chambers, maybe a little less known, but if you're in the industry, you probably know he was the guy, the CEO who took Cisco from really kind of an off the map company to the powerhouse it is today. He's been retired for several years, but he had some pretty prophetic and scary things that he said over the years that have often been true. One of them was at least 40% of all businesses will die in the next 10 years. He said that at one point. He says if they don't figure out how to change their entire company to accommodate new technologies. And it's definitely true. If you don't adapt, things can change. Speaking of which, this last person, I'll make today's session a little interactive. I'm going to read a quote. If anyone knows who said this, just type it in the Q&A there or in the chat box. I'll give you a hint. This guy is not in the business world and has not been around for some time, but he said, it is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change. So probably no surprise there. That's Charles Darwin. But I think all those things are true about the business world today. If you don't adapt, it's bad for your business. And technology is ever evolving, ever changing, and that's one of the things we'll be talking about today. So first, I'll tell you a little bit about Optus. And I won't read all the slides necessarily, but I'll add some color commentary along the way here. So at Optus, really what we do, we're customer first, vendor neutral technology advisor. Our goal is really to find the best technology to meet your needs. So we'll help you evaluate top tier technologies in various areas like voice, cybersecurity, network, and quite a few more as well. And this is a free service. We're really your advocate in the process, and we help you navigate that technology marketplaces out there. So we're not really just trying to shove one technology at you. We're typically going to bring two or three to the table, help you evaluate which is the best one to meet your specific needs, and help you negotiate those contracts just throughout the whole process. But today, really, we're going to be talking about the effects of the FCC changes that occurred a few years ago. So we'll talk about what's happening due to this deregulation. We'll talk about the government changes to those legacy products, and these are from providers like AT&T, Verizon's, all the big guys out there. But we'll also talk about how this affects you. And a spoiler alert right now, these changes are not usually good for anyone except for maybe the providers. And then last, we'll talk about your options and how we can help. And that's really what we're here to share today. We'll point you in the right direction, help you mitigate some of those not so good consequences, and we'll just have some good discussion around that. So let's dive in. So what's happening with copper wiring? So as of August of 2022, the Federal Communications Commission dropped federal regulations on analog and digital lines. The FCC mandate to eliminate POTS lines was ordered in response to the appeals of network service providers in their push to modernize communication services. So I'll pause right there. And as you know, reading the news and everything else, typically you get part of the story. And I'll say this is all definitely true. The providers out there, the AT&T, Verizons of the world, et cetera, they definitely do want to modernize a lot of their transmission methods, their services and products that they offer. What they don't necessarily say, and wasn't as published, is that these guys were incurring a lot of more maintenance costs. So each year, those old copper wires in the ground laid there, maintenance was higher and higher for these companies to maintain. So that's one push from their perspective to get people off of this technology. And what's really the impact of this change? This is what we're here talking about today. So with no regulation, it's really no big surprise that if you look in the top left here, the biggest change, the first impact is really increasing cost. So without that regulation, there's no cap on what they can charge that POTS line or analog trunk coming into your service. And if you haven't checked your latest provider invoices for those costs, whether it's a POTS line, a T1 or PRI, do yourself a favor. And after this call, I know this is not fun, ask for those invoices from your accounting group, from whoever it is, whoever kind of approves those, because what I've seen in the past is people just often rubber stamp those. It's not like you're getting a new service. You've had this service for years, and people just kind of usually check, yep, that's good, yep, we're getting that, but they don't really notice that increasing cost that's happened over the years. And just to kind of give you an example is, a few years ago, a single POTS line could have been $20 to $50 per line. That's pretty economical. Now costs are easily well over $100 per line, sometimes several hundred, or even a few $1,000s per line. And again, just to keep it interactive, if you've got any horror stories of what you've seen as far as POTS lines or whatever, type that in the comments. What's the highest cost you've seen on a POTS line in your business there? And again, if you haven't checked those, most important takeaway from this meeting, right after this meeting, as soon as you can, go and check those costs. But just imagine if those lines have increased that much, if you think about even a small business, if they've got 10 or 20 POTS lines in use and their cost are that much, and you look at that over a year's time, it could easily be tens of thousands of dollars that have increased over the last few years in cost. So it's easy to see why I'm asking you to check your invoices for sure. And it's also it's pretty disconcerting to see those prices rise like that, because in some cases they've risen dramatically. But the good news is that there's really no better way to be a hero in your organization than to offer to save them that same amount of money that we're talking about. So, if your bills have increased that much, the good news is at the end of this, we'll talk to you about how to save and get back to closer to what you were paying before versus where those bills have risen to today. So saving money, you'll always wear the hero hat inside any organization. And it's also another great way to fund other technology projects that you've been getting off the ground. So if you need to get something off the ground, you just haven't had the money to do so. Again, a great thing to look at. So that's just the top left point there. If we look at a few of the others and kind of imagine a service interruption, I'll take a pause there. If you look through these, they're no longer required to maintain lines. Numbering is at risk. If lines are cut, they don't necessarily have to repair it. What does that mean to your business? Really take a minute there to think. And if you have a line cut or an outage on one of these lines, how does that affect you? If it just goes down for a few minutes, a few hours, or a few days, or even indefinitely, I'm sure the repercussions are not good, but either way, it's definitely not a pleasant situation. So if there's no safety net, no plan B, if you're on some of these legacy products, then an outage can really be very devastating on whatever function that you have on that line. If you have a number tied to those systems as well, sometimes those are used internally, connected to other systems. And if, even the loss of a number, even if the line stays up and they have to just give you a new number after repair or something like that, that can be pretty critical as well. But before we kind of take our next step, we'll take a look at some specifics of these services. But I just want to stop there and see if there's any questions from the group. And Sophie, if you don't mind help keeping me honest, if we see some pop out there.
Yes, I'm actually in the process of allowing mics right now. So if you have any questions, feel free to shout them out. If you're not the type to just shout out your own question, you can also pop it in the chat.
We'll give everyone just a minute there. Then we'll kind of look at the specifics of where we see these lines today. All right, we'll go ahead and proceed. And Sophie, feel free to jump in there if you see something come through that I do not.
Sure thing.
So let's take a look at some of the services and what their most common uses are. So again, a lot of these are POTS lines, but they can be used for different technologies. So I'll take a pause there, and whether it's a fire alarm or an elevator line or just an ATM, many businesses have different uses for these lines out there today. Which ones are most important to you? What happens if these stop working in your business? And on our particular business, if it's a fire alarm, of course, that's probably true of any business. A fire alarm going off that doesn't get out is pretty critical. And one thing we'll talk about a little bit soon is just the benefits of newer technology. But regretfully, I've worked with different individuals that had like a POTS line tied to a fire alarm or a burglar alarm, and they've had that line in place for years, possibly, only to find out when they had an emergency, they had a fire, that POTS lines may not have been working for like months or years, and they've been paying for it the whole time, but there's really no way for the carrier typically to proactively check those lines. So that's the other good thing about newer services too, is just being able to proactively monitor the health of and connectivity of these lines. So how's this affecting businesses today? So some businesses have been given deadlines to move to a cloud solution or lose their number. Some cases, analog and PRI services have been eliminated, and businesses weren't given a choice with the carrier's network despite being long-term customers. And I've seen people carriers maintain like PRIs out to businesses, but oftentimes what they'll do is they'll deliver SIP to your premise there at your DMARC, but then they'll convert that SIP to that traditional legacy service that we're talking about, whether it's a PRI, POTS lines, or whatever, and still charging that premium price for you, but they're doing kind of a conversion even though they've used the cheaper technology to get to your door. One thing there is you don't want to pay higher prices for still that older technology because it's still getting POTS delivered to you. And the other thing too is often that can just introduce another point of failure. So if you've got like an old PBX that you've having to convert to a PRI or SIP trunks that are converting to analog trunks, you're often just introducing an extra hardware into your environment that you may not necessarily need as well. So the current reality. So the current landscape, it's kind of in disarray with lack of knowledge. People are in usually one of three boats here, right? Usually there's no awareness because they haven't checked their bill. They haven't looked at that invoice from their carrier in some time, and they're continuing to pay whatever that rate was. Some people, and hopefully after this webinar, people are kind of aware enough to check that invoice, check those bills to make sure they're not being charged exorbitant amounts. And even if you're not, though, I will say these lines are going away at some point. You don't want to be on those lines when they force you to get off of them. You'd rather do that at a time of your choosing. So if you do have those analog trunks, and even if you're just being charged $100 a line, which is pretty economical by today's standards, you probably want to go ahead and migrate off those onto a better technology and kind of get ahead of the curve. And that's the last bullet point there, is just some customers are already looking at solutions, and there's a lot of different things out there too. And that's really, I think, where we can come in and offer some assistance, because there's a lot of POTS alternatives out there. You'll see POTS in a box. Some people call it POTS replacements, but they're not all the same. There's different technologies for sure. And there's lots of benefits to these, but it's kind of matching that right technology, that right solution to your needs, which is kind of what we do here at Optus. Um, and I'm not going to read all the bullet points here, but they really can be summarized in a couple points. And that is, you're going to get more functionality at less cost. With that advent of the deregulation, costs have increased. You can typically get a cheaper solution that has a lot more intelligence in it, kind of like we're talking about here. You've got knock monitoring, you've got redundancy, you've got fax over IP, you've got batteries for redundancy as well. You can have a lot of different functionality, and typically that's going to be at a cheaper price. So that's that fabled win-win that you hear about, but often don't see in the business world. You're paying less money and getting more functionality. So if there was a sales pitch in this presentation, that would be it right there. It's an easy win. You can save money, get more stuff, use that money to make yourself a hero, or to try to fund another technology project that you may have going on in your business. But regretfully, I guess the downside here is there's not necessarily a silver bullet to any of this as well. As I mentioned, there are different types of technology. So if you've got like a fire alarm, for example, depending on your state, there's codes, national fire codes for compliance that you have to meet. So some of those providers out there, POTS in a box or POTS replacements, will meet certain codes in certain states. Some will not. So just making sure that you're getting the right solution for your state, for that use of line, whatever that may be, whether it's burglar alarm, fire alarm, elevator phone. A lot of those have some compliance around them that you just want to make sure you're checking the box at the end of the day. And I think that's really where we come in. Free assessment is easy. Again, we don't charge for our services. You call us and we can understand those needs, understand the lines that you've got. If that's a fire alarm, elevator, phone, whatever the case may be, we'll find the right solution for you that is compliant, offers the features like redundancy, the monitoring, things like that you didn't have before. That way, if you do have a fire, that alarms line is not dead. It's a valid line that's working as they test those on a regular basis. But just feel free, reach out and give us a call. We'll source that solution for you. And again, just make sure it meets your particular needs. It's that easy. And the easy part to do is there's a couple of us here that do this in-house. You've got our name and numbers up here on the slide. Feel free to jot that down. Give us a call. We're glad to help. Again, I'm Shane. My companion Ryan's off on vacation today. He couldn't be here, regretfully. But we'll also send out this slide deck, I believe, Sophie, after the fact. So you'll have this recording or this slide deck that we can provide to you as well. So if you want to download that, watch that, or even if you registered and didn't get to attend or pass this along to the right person in your company, you can get that over to those guys. So I'll kind of leave you with a couple things and we'll stop for questions. But again, at Optus, we do a lot more than just POTS replacement. As I mentioned earlier, numerous technologies we can help you evaluate, whether that's like cloud voice, contact center, cybersecurity, physical security, network services. And I'll just kind of give you an example of how that looks. If you're looking for like voice services, we deal with really all the industry leaders like RingCentral, Zoom, Vonage, Five9, and many, many more. But we really are looking at your needs, what your particular requirements are, et cetera. And we're trying to match kind of a short list of, hey, these 2 or 3 providers will do a good job for you. And we've had experience with them. We've worked with them, and kind of bring those to the table for you. We can organize the demonstrations. We can help you ask the right questions. Because the good thing about a service like ours is if you go to any of the providers, there's a lot of great products out there, and they'll always tell you their strengths. What they don't always do is tell you their weaknesses or what they're not so great at. So if we help with an evaluation process, we'll bring 2 or 3 providers to you, and we'll tell you vendor A, hey, they do a great job here, but if you've got this need, maybe they're not the right fit for you. So again, our goal is really just to find that best technology solution that fits your needs, and then help you make a direct connection to that particular provider. But with that, I'll stop talking. The good news is a fairly short demonstration today, so we'll give you some time back in your day. But are there questions that you guys want to ask? Sophie, feel free to open the mics or see if anything comes in. We're glad to help you guys in any way that we can. And again, just feel free to reach out otherwise.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shane. But yes, I'll be monitoring the chat. If you've got any questions, pop them in there. Um, or I think I've allowed all of your mics. So if anybody wants to speak up, ask a question, no question is a bad question. You know, they're we're here to help you. So let us know what we can do for you.
And if there are no questions today, definitely feel free to always reach out. Myself and Ryan are both sounding boards. So even if, as Sophie said, don't think it's a silly question, we do technology each and every day. That's all we do is help companies evaluate the different technologies out there. And it's, like I said before, always changing, right? So it's hard to keep abreast of that. Even people in the IT industry, if you're not evaluating new technology, you kind of get siloed in what you do, what you're used to. Feel free to use this as a sounding board going, hey, we're evaluating this, or we had a question about this particular technology. We're glad to talk to you and help you with any of that along the way.
I did pop in Shane's email address into the chat if anybody wants to copy and paste that. Shane, can you go back to your last slide and I'll pop that into the chat as well? That way, or the slide that had your contact info. That way I can share
Certainly.
that as well. Easy copy paste. There we go. Thank you so much. All right, and you all should have that information right there. Feel free to drop Shane a call or email him with any questions. We also have Ryan Boyd as a part of our team. He is an excellent advisor as well.
And otherwise, you guys have a great lunch. We'll give you time back in your day to celebrate some food.
All right, y'all have a great day. And this recording will be out shortly.
Thanks, everyone.